You work, you save, and yet it feels like your money just evaporates. The prophet Haggai diagnosed this economic disease 2,500 years ago. All right, so today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating financial philosophy, and what's really cool is that it's thousands of years old, but you'll see it has a surprisingly modern take on, our money problems. It all kicks off with this simple but really powerful image, a bag with holes. So does this sound familiar? You work hard, right? You get that paycheck, you try to do the responsible thing and save, but then somehow at the end of the month, you're just staring at your account wondering, wait, where did it all go? It's that super frustrating feeling, like your bank account just has a slow leak somewhere. Well, believe it or not, this feeling is anything but new. I mean, check out this quote. It's from over 2,500 years ago, and it describes the exact same problem. The metaphor is just so striking, isn't it? Earning wages only to put them into a bag with holes. So the big question is, what's causing these holes in the bag? According to this philosophy, it's not just, bad luck or that surprise car repair that always seems to pop up. No, it points to something way deeper, a specific flaw in how we actually think about money. Okay, so the problem, according to the source material, really starts with our mindset. It happens when we view money only as a personal safety net, right? Something just for our own comfort. When we kind of wall off our finances like that, the text calls this a closed system. That's the exact moment they become so vulnerable. And this leads us right to the core of the issue, what the source calls a hoarder's mindset. Now, we're not talking about, clutter in your house. This is about a very specific financial mentality that's seen as the real reason for that leaky money bag. So let's be super clear about how this philosophy defines hoarding. It is not the same as being a good saver, not at all. It's about stockpiling resources, money, stuff, whatever, with no real plan to use them. And the driver behind it all, a deep-seated fear that there won't be enough. And wow, this quote really gets to the heart of the danger here. The source frames this as more than just a financial problem, it's a psychological one. Think about that phrase. Hoarding money out of fear is like building an altar to anxiety. It's basically prioritizing your fear over any sense of purpose. Okay, so this chart here really lays out the two mindsets side by side, and you can see the difference is pretty stark, right? Look at the driver for each one. Hoarding, totally fueled by anxiety, and that leads to a closed system. But the alternative, this idea of stewardship, is driven by purpose, and just that one shift reframes everything. Money stops being a safety net you desperately cling to and becomes capital that you actively manage, like through an open channel. All right, so how do we actually make that shift from a closed system to an open one? Well, the philosophy gives us this really powerful analogy to help picture it, the difference between a stagnant, murky swamp and a vibrant river. The foundational idea here is actually a pretty radical shift in how you see yourself. It's about no longer thinking of yourself as the ultimate owner of your wealth. Instead, you start to see yourself as a steward, a manager who's responsible for directing capital that's been entrusted to you. To make this really concrete, the source asks us to imagine all of our financial resources, so our income, our assets, the whole shebang, as a body of water. And when that water's flowing, just like a river, it's dynamic. It irrigates fields. It powers things. Basically, it brings life and vitality wherever it goes. It's active. It's productive. But what happens when that water stops moving? It turns into a swamp, right? It stagnates, it gets toxic, and it can't support life anymore. And according to this source, the exact same thing happens to money when it's just hoarded and left to sit. So really, the whole philosophy kind of boils down to this simple choice. Are you going to be a river or are you going to be a swamp? The goal is to become a channel for resources to flow through, not just a reservoir where they sit and, stagnate. Okay, so this all sounds really interesting in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in the real world? Well, the text points to a historical figure who is basically a perfect model for living this out, and that person is John Wesley. You might know him as a major religious leader from the 18th century. He's presented as someone who didn't just talk the talk about financial flow, he really rigorously walked the walk. Wesley lived by this really simple but powerful three-part motto. First, earn all you can. Second, save all you can. And third, give all you can. See how that works? The first two steps are basically designed to turbocharge the third one, creating this massive outward flow. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. When Wesley said save, he meant something very different from what we usually mean today. It wasn't about piling up cash for his own comfort or luxury. For him, saving meant simplifying his own life to free up as much money as possible, not to hoard it, but to put it back into circulation by giving it away. So when you put all these pieces together, we've got the leaky bag, the river analogy, and the real-life example of Wesley. We land on the central takeaway here, the philosophy of flow. At its heart, it's all about keeping your resources in motion. So here's the core argument, plain and simple. True financial vitality isn't measured by how much you can pile up and keep for yourself. It's measured by how effectively you can direct the flow of resources that are passing through your hands. And this last quote really just captures the entire essence of this worldview. It suggests that when you make that mental switch from being an accumulator to being a distributor, you actually patch up that bag with holes. Because in this philosophy, the act of distribution itself is what opens the door to a continuous supply, or what the Source calls divine provision. And so that leaves us with one last really powerful question to think about. When it comes to your own money, your own wealth, what is it? Is it a fortress that you have to defend out of fear, or is it a river that you get to direct with purpose?